Keep ticking in. I think we just under 3 million votes counted at the moment. So that board ticking up nicely, those results starting to trickle in, and hopefully we'll be able to zoom into those provincial results. And speaking of provincial results, let's cross now to the Western Cape. Our reporter Vanessa Puna there with the latest. Vanessa.
Yes, good morning to you, Sakina. At least here in the Western Cape, early indications indicate that the Democratic Alliance will reach a majority at about 56%. I think just on 40% of the voting districts have now been declared. At this point, just having a quick squiz at the results board ahead of me, I see that the ANC, of course, the second biggest party here in the province, are standing at about between 26 and 28%. But joining me to talk about these early results and also the predictions for the Western Cape, which you know has been a hotly contested province, yet it has been in control of the Democratic Alliance for the past 10 years, is Professor Aaron Schweller. Prof, a very warm good morning to you. Let me start at the top. So it seems that the speculations about coalitions in the Western Cape may not happen at this point in time if one looks at what the early results indicate, with the DA seeming to be firmly in control with the number of votes counted at this stage.
We work in this situation with probabilities. The probability is very good that the DA will govern by itself and on its own in the Western Cape. The current predictions show a roughly 55% vote for the DA, which I think is surprising also for the DA. We know they had to claw back from a position where they had a serious set of contentious issues, and I think they are quite pleased with what is happening here. Simultaneously, it seems as if the ANC does not seem to really realize the potential it should have in the province, and it's consistently in the last number of elections not doing as well as it should.
Prof, if I can ask you why this is, because if I understand, the ANC has not yet managed to push the 45% ceiling, I think it was. What would you say are the challenges facing the ANC? Why are they not managing to capture at least the attention of the majority of voters in the Western Cape?
The Western Cape is a fairly mature democracy in a broader South African democracy. It means that the voters have a very good idea of what would be in their interest, and they vote in terms of their interest. They have not been convinced that the ANC, and this is the majority Western Cape voters, that the ANC will act in their interest. It seems as if there is a notion here, also supported by evidence from the questions which came up in the campaign of the ANC, that here in actual fact, the ANC does not cater for the majority voters in terms of jobs, in terms of those things that they care of and which are in their interest. So the ANC has a very strong tradition and a strong message about non-racialism. It is not experienced in that way by a majority of the Western Cape voters. So I believe and I'm not here to advise any political party, but if you talk non-racialism, you should actually also act non-racialism, and I think in the Western Cape that impacts on the perceptions of the voters.
Prof, let us turn quickly. At this point it looks as though the EFF here in the Western Cape will garner about 3.4, I think just under 4% of the vote. Patricia de Lille's Good Party at this point in time also seems to be hovering around the 3% mark. Is this expected, seeing that it's a very new party? It has not had any sort of electoral history, but of course the leader of the party has decades-long experience as a politician in South Africa.
Well, Mr. de Lille, the previous mayor of of Cape Town, actually did a good job there, and she has got a lot of support in especially the Cape Peninsula environment and in some of the other areas in the rural areas. And I think it is a fair result. However, I would think that if Good sits back and they say, they would probably argue we would have liked to do a bit better. Having said that, they are now going to be in a position where they can consolidate. They were very ambitious to start a national campaign across all the 9 provinces. If they now consolidate, then I think in the future they may build from this base. They more or less also approximating the at the time ID votes that they did get under Mr. Lil. And finally, I think there is a challenge there, and that is Mr. Lil is a very charismatic and professional leader, good leader for good. What happens, because she probably has maybe one term, maybe a second term, so they will have to start to build a cadre of new leaders in the Good Party.
Do you think that at this point the AAC-DP, which has always been, which actually is a party represented in the provincial legislature currently or before this election, do you think that they will be satisfied with their showing at the polls at this stage?
They probably are disappointed in the sense that at some stage the polls showed that they were gaining a lot of support in the province, and somehow that did not materialize fully. And it seems once again it is as if that final image thing just doesn't work for them. When people enter that emotional space of the voting booth, then they say, is this really a serious contender? Once again, I think they will have to look at new dynamics, new approaches to winning voter support.
Very briefly, let's touch on the Freedom Front Plus. Of course, we've got in the Freedom Front Plus a new candidate being Peter Murray. What has the result been up until this stage, and can you see a significant change as, of course, the day progresses and counting continues?
Well, the Freedom Front changed its particular way of seeing things. They moved from a minority party for whites only, if we're quite honest, to now a party for minorities. That in itself is an ideological shift and a practical shift. Secondly, I don't think they did pick up a lot of votes on the basis of their involvement with Mr. Peter Murray. What I think probably explains their improved performance is the fact that there's also in-migration into the Western Cape of lots of people retiring from the Gauteng area, and that I think also leads into some support for them. And that agenda is one where there is a feeling with mostly Afrikaans-speaking people that the DA may not be catering for their needs, particularly to the extent that they would like it, and people vote their interests, especially in the Western Cape. We have a less emotional electorate here. People here shift their votes, and I think that also says that the Freedom Front did much better than previously, and I think it's not necessarily Mr. Peter Murray's influence, but that in-migration from, especially into the Southern Cape, of large numbers of people who are retiring from Gauteng.
Thank you very much, Professor Edwin Schweller there, of course, our political analyst, just deciphering the numbers, as it were, at this stage. 40% of the voting districts are now declared in the Western Cape. And from us here in Cape Town now, it's back to Johannesburg.
Well, not quite to Johannesburg, to the Rock here in Pretoria. Thank you, Vanessa. We're going to take a break, and on the other side of that, you will be in Johannesburg with Leanne and Professor Boysen.